morning.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Good morning. Well, I have a new computer, so if I can figure out how to turn my camera on, but anyway, but I'm here. If you don't see me, it's fine.
You look like the Blob. If you remember the Blob from the
I
1950s.
remember that.
Yes. Yeah.
I may be changing devices in a few minutes. I'll just go off and be right back.
Hi, Sergeant. We'll start in 1 minute.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning, Dave.
Hi, John. It's 9 o'clock. I am going to welcome everyone to the October 14th meeting of the Captiva Community Panel. First thing will be introductions to see if we have a quorum. So I'll call out our members. Bruce McDonald,
Yes, I'm here.
David Mintz is here, Mike Bennett,
Here.
Linda Lay. She's here. I
Here.
see her. Ron Wade. He's here. I see him. Yeah, John Jensen,
Yeah, good morning, Dave.
Sandy Stillwell Youngquist.
Yeah.
He's here. Okay, Margaret Maville is on the road, but she's going to be calling in on our telephone. Ken Suarez is at a meeting this morning. As soon as his meeting is over, he's going to be joining us. John Rosen, I think, is in transit, but I'm not sure. And Tony Laffey has another meeting and he won't be able to join us. But we do have a quorum and we have a lot to cover today. First thing, though, is the approval of our minutes from September 9th. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make the motion.
Is there a
Daniel
second?
second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Minutes pass. Next thing on the agenda is our regular updates from the people who help us keep our island safe. First is Sergeant Rich Zeltman.
Hear me? Could you hear me, David?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So I know you guys got a lot to cover, so I'm just going to make this quick. We had our triathlon a couple weeks ago, and I just wanted to report that things went well. We did have to shut down the road on Captiva Drive during that time, and I know it was an inconvenience with some of the residents out here in the public, but we had to keep the athletes safe. So we had part of it is to close that road. And So we did that. Regarding, I just want to mention regarding the renourishment project, we just asked the public if they could not go within the fenced in area, whether it's at Turner Beach or wherever they're going to set up the heavy equipment, just to avoid the fenced in area, especially as it's getting closer to the more public or populated or popular areas of the beach as it moves north, because we just want to make sure that the people who go to the beach are safe, and with that heavy equipment, you want to stay outside of the fenced in area. Another thing is that we understand that some of the new cell phones, there's a feature that if it doesn't recognize the phone number in your contacts, that the phone won't ring. So it might be a good idea to add the sheriff's office non-emergency phone number to your cell phone. I'm not sure if your viewers know about that feature, but some of the new cell phones, to avoid scammers, if someone calls you and it doesn't recognize the number from your phone contacts, the phone won't ring. So we ask that your viewers maybe add that phone number to your phone, or our sheriff's office, or any emergency number, non-emergency number, into your contacts, so that your phone will ring in case we have to get a hold of you. So that's basically the latest update from the sheriff's office.
Hey,
Yes, or
Rich, what's the best number? Do you have that number handy?
Yes. Yes,
what-
it's 239-477-1000.
477-1000.
Yes.
And that's right to the sheriff's department? Okay.
Yep, that's the sheriff's office non-emergency number.
Okay, all right, thank you.
any other questions for Sergeant Zeltman? Thank you, Sergeant.
Welcome.
Thanks, Rich.
Next thing on the agenda is a report from Chief Jeff Powell, and he's with us.
Good morning, everyone. Couple updates on the fire district side. We'll get out of the way here first. We had 2 new firefighters start this week, so you'll see some new faces out and about, some extra training. Seems like a lot more people around, so they started yesterday. Have about a week or 2 of normal orientation, and then they'll be assigned a shift to go into. This week is the annual declaration of Fire Safety Week, Fire Prevention Week, which is the 5th through the 11th. This year's theme is Charge into Fire Safety. I'm sure you've probably seen the signs, around hanging up places. I think Sanibel's got one on front of their building, social media, the news, whatever. So this year's kind of thoughts behind it is lithium-ion batteries in the home. A couple of the bullet points is buy only listed products, charge devices safely, and recycle batteries responsibly. We will have a little link to the program on our website if you want to go on and view any of the specifics of it, but those are the points for this year. As always with Fire Safety Week, it's a good time. Smoke detectors in your home, make sure the batteries are charged. If you got fire extinguishers, make sure those are still in date and charged. All those good things you guys have around your homes or rental properties. Lastly, on the normal update, we had expressed, Brighton's on this call, so he can, I'm sure can and will talk about it more. I won't harp on beach renourishment, but we had a conversation yesterday just on the beach access points and what those are actually going to look like as we get to a finished product. We just have some concerns. If you kind of look at what Turner Beach currently looks like on our access, would be pretty challenging on our vehicles to get out to that beach for rescue purposes. So I've already addressed those concerns with him. They've somewhat addressed it and working on it and everything else, so they can provide those updates. I won't go any further on that. And then I don't know, David, how much you want me to get into the Rauschenberg property. If you want me to mention it now as part of my update, or if you want to, I see it's on the agenda as well, so I'll let you kind of tell me what you.
Whatever you feel comfortable doing, please do.
Okay, so I know it's, like I said, it's a topic on your agenda, but just to give everybody a heads up, we have a special meeting scheduled for tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. I do anticipate at the last meeting, there was a lot of discussion. Obviously, everybody knows the foundation's property is for sale. It's a lot of property, so we had passed the resolution to kind of do fact finding and due diligence on that property going forward, see what the foundation's purposes is. I'm sure everybody's aware that's been our main landing zone on this island for 40 years, if not more. We understand the importance of that. We understand the importance of that for the community. So they made the discussion the last meeting to do the full appraisal on the property and what that opportunity is going to look like going forward. I can't speak for the board, but I do anticipate them moving forward in tomorrow's meeting with submittal of an LOI for a portion of the property. Obviously, we're not looking to purchase the entire 20, I believe it's 22 acres. But we do understand the importance, especially of the Bayside, for the future safety of this island, whether that's a future fire station location that's more resilient for storms, staging location after storms for equipment and supplies, the continued landing of emergency helicopters on the island, potential training site for our firefighters. I'm sure everybody knows how limited space is on this island currently. We generally have to pay our guys overtime on their days off to go train elsewhere. So there's a lot of opportunities that this site could allow for the future, the preservation and safety of this island. So the board will have a special meeting on that tomorrow and decide how they want to move forward. We've had a lot of calls from community members, homeowners, businesses, stuff like that, encouraging us that they feel that is the process that they want us to take. So that'll be tomorrow's special meeting on that. I
Okay,
think that kind of sums it up for you, but
Jeff, other than the issue of the Rauschenberg property, which is separate on the agenda, which is that we don't discuss now with Jeff, are there any other questions to Jeff regarding his fire department report?
oh, sorry. One last thing. Doesn't look like there's any other questions, so I'll make one last comment. Last month, it didn't coincide with this meeting. I wasn't able to make it, so I apologize for that. But last month, they did reduce the millage at the last meeting from the proposed 2.4 down to 2.29. So if you didn't see that in the paper, I know Tiffany had it in the paper, but just so I can let you guys know since I wasn't able to make that last meeting.
Are there any questions other than on the Rauschenberg Foundation property for Jeff from the panel members? Nope. Thank you, Jeff.
I'll be around, David.
Okay, very good. That's perfect. Next is the CEPD update from, I think it's going to be Brighton Hurd, who is here with us, I see.
Yeah, thanks, David. I appreciate it. As everyone has noticed, our project is moving swiftly along. We had a little bit of a rocky start. There were a lot of calibrations and rhythms that needed to be understood in the early stages. That first week, we moved a little bit slower, but since then, they've made tremendous progress every day. I think that we are right at about 1/3 of the island that has been completed, the southern third. The dunes look really impressive and strong. There is, as Jeff mentioned, some of the access points and the walkways still will need to be contoured, and that happens in the next phase, but we are certainly considering all of the options that we have there. We're still on track to complete the project by November 28th. Turner Beach will still remain closed through the 31st while they finish that particular end of the beach and do the restoration of the parking lot itself before it's reopened. Allison Hagerup will be closing probably within the next 2 to 3 weeks so that we can use that as our next staging area. The subline that is currently on the beach on the southern end of the island will continue to be used for the next couple of weeks, and then they will have to swing the subline up to the north end of the island and it will land in South Seas. Then they will begin working south from that point to meet up with the end of the extent that they made it to moving north. And once they've completed that, they'll swing the pipe north and go through South Seas and up to Redfish Pass to complete the project. The weather looks great, and I'm very thankful that we've not had any delays due to weather. We do have this brand new monstrous ship called the Amelia Island currently working as the dredge on the project. They have informed me that as of Friday of this week, that ship is going to sail out and be replaced by another ship called the Galveston, which I believe has done restoration work on Captiva previously, and that dredge will complete the project for us. I
Great.
think that's about all the updates that I've got, but I'm happy to answer any questions if anybody has any.
Mhm.
Anybody have any questions for Brighton?
Mhm.
Brighton, I have two questions for you. First is that I had heard at some point that there was going to be sand deposited at the Santiva area, North Sanibel. And I guess that has to be done in conjunction with CEPD. So could you just give us a brief report on whether that's been worked out and whether they're going to fortify the Santiva area, because that's obviously a vulnerable area that's not directly under your jurisdiction.
Absolutely. Yeah, I can give a brief overview. So we intend on discussing that at our next board meeting. We had to unfortunately cancel the one that was scheduled for yesterday, but I'm hopeful that we'll have it rescheduled within a week. I've tentatively rescheduled it for next Monday, but there are a couple of commissioners who are having trouble with that date, so I'm trying to find one that works a little bit better. But the overview of the issue is that Sanibel would like to basically piggyback on our contract and permits, which is possible and acceptable. There are some possibly higher levels of indemnification that some of the board members would like to see. There are some concerns about mobilization costs that are being expended by Captiva and many of the studies that have been done to make this project possible. So I think some of the board members would like to see that Sanibel compensates us in some way for that. But I do absolutely understand the importance of protecting that area that you just described, where the concrete wall is just south of Blind Pass. That's kind of really threatened and in an unstable position. So I'm personally totally for it, but it is ultimately a board decision. So we're going to discuss that at our next board meeting and decide whether or not we can make it work.
Yeah, the only thing I would add to that, Brian, is that Sanibel, the city of Sanibel, has been incredibly cooperative with the island of Captiva over the past number of years, sometimes at great cost to them, politically and other which ways. And so anything you can do to work out a good arrangement with Sanibel, recognizing how supportive they've been of Captiva, that would be helpful.
Absolutely. I love to be a good neighbor. I totally agree.
Okay. And the second question I have for you, I received a couple of phone calls about the height of the dunes, and that in some places, I've been told it's 10 feet, in some places it's 12 feet. Could you just explain if in fact there's some 10-foot dunes and 12-foot dunes, and how you distinguish where you put the 10-foot ones and where you put the 12-foot ones?
Sure. So obviously all of this design was decided on long before my time here, but what I've been told is the differences in the dunes is essentially the lower elevations are going to be where it's tying into existing structures generally. The jetties on both ends, so it tapers down, I believe, at those ends. But across the general section of the larger portion of the island, it should be around 12 feet, which is the FEMA flood elevation.
Okay. When you say the FEMA flood elevation, that's basically the flood elevation that FEMA requires you to be at a height to avoid damage from storm surge.
Correct.
Okay, any other questions for Brighton?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
David, all right,
Yeah.
Yeah, so you're saying the dunes are to be 12 feet above sea level?
Yes,
Okay, so the highest point of property on Captiva is probably around 8 feet of sea level. So that means the dunes are gonna be 4 feet higher than the highest point of property?
approximately, as I understand it. Yes, sir.
Okay, I've heard a few, not many complaints about people saying the dunes are so high that it's blocking their views of the ocean. Has anybody brought that to you, Brighton, or?
Yes, they have, but as I mentioned, all of these design plans were decided on in 2023 and 2024, long before my time here. So I didn't, unfortunately, have any part in the design of that, but I know that after the recent heavy storms, there was some strong desire to have a robust dune put in place to help further protect the
Sure.
island from the effects of the sea level rise and obviously climate change that's making these storms a little stronger and happen more frequently. So, as I understand it, that was the idea behind the 12-foot heights.
I have a question for that, because let's just say you still need to have walkways between the dunes for people to walk. And then when you have that, let's just say you have a storm surge event, and then it all will come funneling in. So when we have a hurricane, are we gonna sandbag those areas so that it doesn't go down the streets and funnel down? Because that was one of the issues on Andy Rossi. It just kind of funneled on down. And so with that, otherwise you could just see all that storm surge coming in and funneling in. And so how are you addressing that? Or have you thought about it yet?
So what the engineers have described to me is the sort of a dog leg structure that exists in those particular locations, so that when the waves begin to pound, they essentially close the dog leg in to form one solid levee, so that it's not a gaping opening in the dune.
Thank you.
Um, Brighton, this is Linda. Sandy's comment about sandbagging, the openings. I don't know if we could sandbag the Andy Rossi lane completely in addition to the dog leg, but certainly with the smaller openings like along along water stretch, it might prove effective. So would it be possible for you all to look at that as an option when we see a Cat 4, Cat 5 storm coming?
Sure, I think that's an appropriate measure to take.
If I may chime in, Linda, you might be somewhat familiar with this. We discussed it when you were on the board. We are in the middle of designing all the pathways from the south end of Tween Waters up to Hager up Park. All with Andy Rossi obviously being the most important. All of that, and we're incorporating options on if major storms do come in, some of the paths, we still have to talk to the DEP, but some of the paths may incorporate some sort of barrier system, as well as options for putting overhead walkways in, and which we'll be talking to the fire department about as well for any sort of walkway options that may be able to accommodate their equipment.
It sounds great, but I think I do like the idea that if we know something is coming, a huge storm, can we do additional things to protect ourselves? But sounds great, John.
Are there any other questions for either Brighton or for John? John, I don't know if you want to add anything else.
Yeah, I just had one. It's Bruce McDonald. Is when you talked about the completion of the project being end in November, does that also include plantings on the dunes?
No, that's just the dredge operations.
Okay.
The
And
plantings
Yeah,
in the actual path designs are underway now. They're completely separate from the renourishment contract. The key here was that we need to get the sand in here. We needed to get the sand in here and then figure out what the next design phase looks like.
Got it. Thank you.
Again, are there any other questions for Brighton? On TPD? Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Brighton. And
Thank
John.
you.
The next thing is on the agenda is Matt DePaulis, the Environmental Policy Director for SCCF. There's Matt.
Hey everyone, good to see you. Been a couple meetings since I've been able to be here. A lot has been going on. We're really gearing up for legislative session at this point. So the delegation meeting's on the 28th of this month. That's when everyone gets together and talks to our elected representatives about our legislative priorities and anything else we'd like them to take up to Tallahassee this session. I anticipate a lot of conversations around preemption, especially with how SB 180 has been received. There's been a lot of lawsuits filed over that bill. That's the one that restricts municipalities or counties from making anything deemed to be more restrictive in their comp plans or land development codes. And there's not a lot of strong definitions around what more restrictive is. So it's already breeding a lot of lawsuits, and we're hoping for a legislative fix around that. This session, and additionally just with the pushback, hopefully that'll cool some of the desires we've seen from Tallahassee to enact a lot of these preemptions that we've seen over the last couple sessions. But with the committee meetings already starting, I anticipate it being a pretty active session this year. Another thing that kind of happened in the past couple months, and I want to make sure is on everyone's radar, is when the county passed their budget this past year, there was not any money for further land acquisition in the Conservation 2020 program. This is a huge deal because this is a program that has had outstanding support in the community. The last time it was reaffirmed in 2016, it received 84% of the vote. So if you can point to anything else where 84% of Lee County residents are saying, please spend my money on this, I'd be surprised to find it. But this is a great program. This is our land acquisition program for conservation. So the county commissioners have said that they're open to finding a solution for this. They've expressed an interest in doing a workshop, possibly in November. We haven't got confirmation on the timing on that. But I would encourage anyone that likes conservation lands or cares about this program to reach out to our county commissioners via email or set a meeting or attend a county commission meeting or attend this workshop when we hear further details on it, to really express our support for this program, because it's really important now, especially as we're seeing land prices rise and the last natural spaces in our county start to disappear at an increasingly alarming rate, that we really lock in the protections for those remaining conservation lands when we can, because everything's only going to get more expensive, as all of us know. But yeah, that's all I've got.
Any questions for Matt? Matt, is there a legislative or statutory requirement that those funds be provided by the county for the 2020?
Yep. So there's a requirement that fund is funded between $40 and $100 million. Right now, it's sitting at about 19 million last I checked, and there's $47 million worth of properties that are ready to be acquired by the program. So the reasoning I've heard it has been that the county is required to fund it, but there's no timing on when the funding needs to happen. So maybe they're kicking the can on funding it. We'll see. Hopefully we can help them reprioritize.
So what you're saying is they're saying they're not violating any statutory mandate, and you're sort of agreeing with that, but you think voluntarily they should fund it to allow them to purchase the land that's on the list, so to speak.
I'm certainly not agreeing with that. I think that there's some legal analysis that needs to be done about how timing requirements work in county ordinances when there's not a specific time certain laid out. But as far as the ordinance is written, it's needs to be funded between $40 and $100 million, and they seem to not be doing that now. So I don't know how that would stand up if questioned.
Any other questions for Matt?
Yes. Is it 40 to $100 million per what? Total? Or
It just says that, yeah, the fund needs to be maintained between $40 and $100 million.
needs to be maintained at, and so it's always supposed to be there even after it's spent. Is that correct?
I'm not sure if I don't have the specific wording in front of me, so I'm not sure if maintained is the word that's used, which is why there's a little confusion there. But the county is asserting that it doesn't need to consistently keep it above that level as long as it has the intention to refund it at some point in the future, which based on their current language has said that because of the storm rebuilding, they don't have the funds for it right now. But there was also a projection that they're only going to be funding appraisals for the next 5 years. So I think, really need to stand up as a community and say that this is a priority for us as Lee County, and we want to see our tax dollars being spent on acquiring conservation lands that are going to provide ecosystem benefits to all of us.
Mhm.
Yeah, the reason this is getting raised is because the county commissioners are writing back saying they're not violating any provisions, et cetera, et cetera. So to the extent that you could clarify that so that when people send emails, if they're going to do that to the county, that we have a clear understanding of what their obligations are and what their obligations aren't as a legal matter. All right, Matt?
Yeah, we'll certainly be putting more information out and some more guidance around what people could be looking at and bringing to some of these conversations as we get closer to that workshop.
Okay, thank you. Any other
Yep.
questions? Any other questions for Matt?
Mm-mm.
Okay, the next thing on the agenda is county code enforcement update. Really only three things. One is we're going to finish the beach renourishment before we start focusing on some of the county codes that relate to the streets where the beach renourishment is taking place. The second thing is I spoke to the Department of Transportation. I'm not in Captiva right now, on Captiva right now, but I saw that they had finished cleaning up the shoulder from Tween Waters North on the Tween Waters stretch so that they removed the debris and the sand so that people could bicycle on that, on the Tween Waters stretch. And then I was told they have completed or about to complete the other half of the Tween Waters stretch, south of Tween Waters, to cut back by hand the vegetation and the hedges that have crept over the shoulder on that part of the Tween Water stretch. Like I say, I'm not there to see it right now, but they're on top of it and they're working on it. I don't know if anybody has any thoughts about that, but supposedly that's been done or is about to get done because it was really overgrown on the shoulder on the Twin Water stretch. And the last thing is Ken Goodham. I don't know if you remember, but you were going to do a draft letter to the community, which I would review, just reminding them of all the code regulations that apply to Captiva and to ask them to voluntarily comply.
Yes, the first draft is done. It needs another swipe at it, which I will try to get done this week. I've had other deadlines that have pushed it off, so I will get you something this week.
No problem. No problem at all. Okay. Anything on code enforcement other than what I just mentioned? Okay, we're moving along. Next thing is County South Seas redevelopment, rezoning, and legal update. Okay, four things. People are pretty much up to snuff on this stuff, but as with respect to the case before Junchenko, which is a settlement agreement where he ruled that the 2003 settlement agreement between the county and the Captiva Civic Association was a valid enforceable contract that limited the development on South Seas to 912 dwelling units. And as everybody knows, that's under appeal. Because it's under appeal by the county, which is a government body, an automatic stay went into effect on that decision pending the appeal decision by the appellate court. Because the stay was in effect and because we were concerned, the community was concerned that South Seas would seek building permits and the county would grant those building permits that would take development over the 912 limit while this case was under appeal and not yet heard. the Captiva Civic Association went to court before Judge Schenko and asked him to vacate the automatic stay so that the settlement agreement will be enforceable at this moment. It's very difficult to vacate an automatic stay when the stay is caused by a government appeal. And Judge Schenko explained that to the court and to the audience in the court at that time. And he was unable to vacate or lift the stay because the county and South Seas advised him that there was no building permits that are going to be applied for or granted within the next 6 months or so, at least till 2026. And so there was no imminent risk of the order being violated. And so that didn't quite satisfy CCA because we have no reason to believe or no assurance that the case is going to be heard before 2026 at the appellate level. So when the judge had asked the county and asked South Seas if they would agree not to seek or issue building permits until the Court of Appeals decided its case, they would not agree. So at that point, when it was obvious that there was a risk that there would be building permits issued, taking us over the 912 limit before the appellate court issued a decision, the court instructed South Seas and the county to advise the CCA of any time that additional building permits are being requested by South Seas or going to be issued by the county. And those building permits include not just residential dwelling units, but hotel dwelling units also. Any units that South Seas is going to be requesting has to be CCA has to be notified of that. And the reason CCA has to be notified of that is so that if the Schenko's order is on the verge of being violated by taking the number of units over 912, the CCA, because they would have notice of those building permits, would be able to go back before the court and ask that that stay be vacated and that the 912 settlement agreement be enforced, because then the violation would be imminent and it would be under case law easier for the judge to vacate or lift the stay. So that condition was placed on by the court on South Seas and the county to advise the CCA of any requests for additional building permits. Subsequent to that order being issued, South Seas and the county have filed motions for the appellate court to review that notice condition ordered by Judge Schenko. So South Seas and the county were not happy that they were required to advise the community and CCA if building permits were going to be requested or issued. And so that motion for review was filed with the courts, and the CCA's attorneys are responding to that motion, basically explaining how Judge Schenko had the authority and the discretion to issue a reasonable condition to maintain the status quo pending the appeal. And that those responsive papers will be filed by the end of this week. So that's just an update on what's happening before Judge Schenko and the 912 settlement agreement. So that's number one. Number two is the appeal of the case itself. All the briefs have been filed. We're just waiting for a date for oral argument to decide so that we will know whether the appellate court will either agree with Judge Schenko or will not agree, and whether or not the settlement agreement will be enforced. The appeal of the DOA case, that is the case where the community has and the CCA has appealed the decision of the DOA judge, saying that the code amendments which exempted South Seas from the density limits for hotels, and only South Seas, whether that violated the plan. That appeal is still pending. It's all brief. We're waiting for the Court of Appeals or the appellate courts to set oral argument and hopefully eventually decide that case. And then lastly, the petition for a writ of certiorari, which is basically an appeal of the decision of the county approving the South Seas rezoning application, which was filed by 23 petitioners, by the CCA, by RLR, by Royal Shell, and by the 20 some odd associations on South Seas, including the timeshares associations. There's an appeal, a petition of writ, which is now pending before the courts, and we should be hearing a response. We don't know, it could be next month, it could be in 6 months, but that is still pending, appealing the decision, the rezoning decision. And along with that, one of the landowners, property owners on South Seas at the home called Soraya, they have filed a separate petition for a writ of certiorari because the Beach House restaurant has been placed right next to their home or close to their home without their claiming the appropriate spacing and appropriate buffers. And there's outside seating there that would impinge upon the enjoyment of that single family home. So those are all the cases that are now pending on this South Seas rezoning related matters. And it's complicated. There are a lot of them. But so far, the community and the CCA feels comfortable that they're doing well on these matters. I hope that was clear, but I know it's complicated. Are there any questions? Okay, either it was so complicated there was no questions, or everybody was able to follow it.
No.
Yeah, okay, great. Next thing on the agenda is the public records request. As you know, the South Seas has put in a public records request of the City of Sanibel, of the Captiva Community Panel, of CEPD. In any case, we have responded with about 700 pages of documents, I believe, to the public records request from the panel. I went back and looked at some additional documents that may mention South Seas, most of them having to do with the very early code changes and some of the sewer related matters, because even though it had nothing to do with the rezoning or density or height, but they do mention South Seas. So I have gone through my emails and submitted them to our attorney. I'm assuming at this point that no other members of the panel have any other emails that meet the criteria, which is that it deals with community planning and also mentions South Seas or timbers, etc. If you have any emails other than the ones that have been provided, please let me know within the next day or two. I'm assuming there aren't. And I will notify our attorney that no other panel members have anything, and other than the ones that I found, which we will provide pursuant to the Sunshine Law. Though there's some question of whether or not we're subject to providing them, but there's no reason why we can't, since we always have a policy of transparency. Okay, so again, I'm asking the panel members to let me know if you have any other documents that relate to South Seas, mention South Seas or timbers and also have to do with community planning that haven't been produced. I think most of the additional documents I found were already produced by Ken Goodham as part of the initial production, but I wanted to make sure that we produce as much as we could. Okay. Any questions on that?
No.
Okay. Next one is the Rauschenberg property. Okay. This one is, I think this is good news. The, as you know, the Rauschenberg put its property up for sale. It's about 22 acres. About half of it, well, not half, less than half, about 9.5 acres are on the Bayside. And the remaining acreage is on the Gulf side. And the broker for the Rauschenberg Foundation has requested anybody interested in purchasing the properties to submit letters of intent to the broker by the 16th of October. Okay. And over the past couple of weeks, a number of developers have walked the property with the broker or the broker's representative, and may be submitting LOIs, letters of intent. It is our understanding that these letters of intent that'll be submitted by the 16th is really a first round. And that that the Rauschenberg Foundation, upon receiving those letters of intent, will possibly cull them, but they will be asking probably for a second or even a third round of offers, depending on what they get in at that point. We would have hoped, and I'll say this honestly, we would have hoped when the Rauschenberg Foundation was going to put up its property for sale, that they would have come to the community and given us, as the community, the first option to purchase and preserve the property, consistent with the legacy of Bob Rauschenberg, who did everything possible to preserve the property, including purchasing the property of and giving people life estates on the properties on that 20 acres so that it would not get developed, because he was very concerned about overdevelopment on Captiva. But for whatever reasons, we were not given that opportunity. So we're in a position now of, if we want to preserve the property, to figure out how to submit letters of intent from the community to purchase and preserve as much of that property as possible. And where we stand at this point is this. And I think that Jeff Powell gave a good introduction to this. But the Captiva Fire Department has really, really stepped up here. And they have and are about to submit, as you heard from Jeff, a letter of intent to purchase the whole, all the properties on the Bayside, which is approximately 9.81 acres. And they're going to get final approval, I guess, based on what Jeff said, from the fire district board to basically put an LOI in for that property for the whole 9.5 acres. They are advising the Rauschenberg Foundation that it's going to be for a future development of a resilient fire station, a permanent helicopter landing zone, dedicated facilities to stage and distribute emergency supplies following a hurricane or natural disaster, create a fire training facility to allow personnel to train locally and improve readiness while minimizing off-island training costs, and construction of a fireboat docking area, enabling faster response to marine incidents and various other community-related things that have to happen or could happen on that property. My understanding, it'll also, by they're thinking of moving some of the emergency EMS services to that property so that the firehouse would be able to serve the fire department people for a much longer period of time than it would be able to serve them if they had to have the emergency vehicles and the staff at that same facility. So this purchase of the 9.81 acres is clearly in the community interest, not only because it's important for our emergency services, but because it also prevents development on that property, development of hotels and various other things that this community obviously does not want. So what will happen is, in order to purchase this property, the fire department will borrow the funds. They will put forth a public bond referendum, which will probably be scheduled sometime in early February. And the community, registered voters on Captiva and registered voters only, which is about 230 or so registered voters on Captiva, who are full-time residents, will have an opportunity to vote in support of that fire control district LOI. And so we are extremely grateful, I think, as a community for the fire department stepping up here for both two reasons. One, to protect the safety of our residents and tourists on the island, but also to help preserve this property from overdevelopment. So this will probably be submitted, after, as Jeff said, after it's approved at the next board meeting of the governance meeting of the fire control district. And then it'll be submitted to the Rauschenberg Foundation. And I think the community is in a position now to let the Rauschenberg Foundation know, once this is submitted, that we would expect and wish them to accept this LOI first and foremost, both to reflect the legacy of Bob Rauschenberg, but also for the interests of this community. So what I would ask, before I get to the second piece of this, what I would ask after this presentation is for the Captiva Community Panel to pass a motion supporting the fire department's letter of intent to purchase the Bayside properties of the Rauschenberg Foundation that they own, and to submit that letter of support or that motion of support to the Rauschenberg Foundation, because we really do want the foundation to accept the fire department's LOI. So that's the first piece of this. The second piece of this is that it became apparent during this whole process that the foundation wanted to sell the property as one piece, the full 22 acres, if they could. And so at this point, we do not know whether they are willing to accept two LOIs, one for the Bayside properties and another LOI from a different entity for the Gulfside properties, or would they prefer to have one letter of intent, one contract for the full 22 acres? And we don't know the answer to that. But we do know that working with a community member who owns property on Captiva, that community member was willing to submit with his development company an LOI for the full 22 acres, and he's about to do that. And he's doing that, advising the Rauschenberg Foundation that he's doing that with the hope of preserving virtually as much property on both the Gulf and the Bayside as possible. That offer would include the fire department's LOI in it. So the fire department within that full offer would get its 9.5 acres, and they would bond for that. And that would be return to the purchaser of the full 22 acres. And then the rest of the community, whether it's for storm water retention pond or for a public park and refuge, whether for if Big Arts wants a piece of it, whether SCCF wants some of it for the C school or for some other purpose or whatever, that we would work, once this was purchased, we would work with this developer to figure out how best to preserve as much of that Gulfside property as possible. And he is committed that the only development that would take place would be consistent with the historic development pattern on Captiva. It would probably just consist of the existing properties, which would be repurposed on Lika Lane and at on the beach where there's that one house that is there. And he would hope to develop as little as possible, but would need to develop just enough so that he could recoup his investment into the property, but there would be no hotels or anything else. And it would be up to the community to raise funds to protect and preserve as much possible. So we're in a position now where there's going to be 2 LOIs submitted, one by the fire department and one by a Captiva friendly developer whose purpose of his LOI or its LOI is to preserve as much for the community as possible and incorporating the fire department's LOI within his total group. So that's where we are at this point. So what I would ask is a motion to support the fire department's LOI and the LOI of this other developer, so long as it is consistent with how I represented it, which is that it is done for the purpose of preserving as much of the property on the Gulf side and incorporating the fire department's wishes on the Bay side in that development proposal. The hope being that the Rauschenberg Foundation accepts either the 2 separate LOIs or the one LOI which incorporates the wishes of the fire department. So that's where we stand at this point. I'm sure you have questions.
Yeah. No, I think it's a great idea. I'll make the motion that you just stated, David.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, is there discussion now? Questions?
David, we haven't heard anything about numbers. It would seem to me that if it's hard to support something without the details behind the numbers, because ultimately a lot of this may end up coming back to the taxpayers.
Well, this is a community thing. There's competition out there that could be listening to this, and we have to be careful what we say.
I know. It's definitely has us as a community between a rock and a hard place, but nonetheless, I don't know how we navigate that, but asking for support at this point, in my opinion, is a little bit premature because of that.
Well, I can tell you generally what the numbers are, because they're no secret. Originally, the broker had told people that they were looking to sell the property somewhere between 2 million or more than $2 million an acre. So they were talking about between $40 and $50 million for the property. That is public. I think the fire department will be putting in an LOI and these numbers will be developed finally, but it would be somewhere, I'm guessing, in the low to mid 20s, $20 million, something between 20 and 22. That's my guess of where it's going to end up for the Bayside properties.
That would incorporate land only, no actual capital expenditures for development.
There is they did an appraisal, and their submission, their LOI, and any bonding has to be consistent with an appraisal that they performed. So that whatever they put in an LOI for, it would be consistent with the appraisal, the law requires that. And that they will do that. And then they will bond for that. What the millage rate will be for what that, whatever that LOI is, depends on how long the bond is for, what the interest rates are, et cetera, et cetera. But that's what we know. The difference between what the fire department is getting, is going to put an LOI for, and approximately, I'm guessing at the end, somewhere between $45 and $50 million for the whole property will be purchased by the other LOI. Or the total amount will be somewhere between, I'm guessing, I can say between 42 and 50 or whatever that number is going to be. There's no way to know because they're basically running it as an auction, John. And it depends what offers they get. There are probably 4 or 5 or 6 people, including South Seas, who have been doing due diligence around the property. And so, but the final numbers, either on the fire department side or on the other side, will depend on what the community, so for example, if Ding Darling wants to purchase and keep control and preserve the fish house, they would get part of that. If Big Arts wants something, they would get part of that. If SCCF wanted a piece of the property, they would purchase that and they would use it for their purposes. So the final numbers will depend in part upon what the community is able to raise and these various other community organizations as they take pieces of this property to preserve and to use for the community. And so it's a lot of moving pieces here, and it's not like we have an inside path with the foundation at this point. I have been told by a number of sources that the foundation's priority is to preserve it for the community in representing and reflecting the legacy of Bob Rauschenberg. But I don't know if that will finally work out that way. So the only thing we're doing at this point is trying to get the contract for the full 22 acres, either through 2 LOIs or 1 LOI, which reflects and understands and has stated publicly in its cover letter to the LOI that the fire department will get the Bayside pieces. And that's where we are at this point. Whether or not the millage rate for the paying for the Bayside piece through the fire district will reflect the full 9.51 acres, or whether or not they will jettison some piece off to some other entity for whatever purposes. Say, for example, sort of pension pond. If the county is willing to pay for that because that's the need of the Captiva Village, that would then come off whatever the final cost would be to the public. So all of that is where we are at this point. We don't even know whether these LOIs will be accepted. But I think to preserve this 22 acres, this is the path the only path that that we can take at this point. And the fact that the fire department has stepped up, and the fact that there's another developer who actually owns property on Captiva and feels very strongly about preserving this property, that he has stepped up. That gives us the opportunity to at least contract for the full 22 acres and then have the community work together to figure out how best to use that property in the community's interest.
Dave, hey, Dave. Yeah, can the fire department go ahead and just vote yes on making this offer without going to the property owners, or can they just pass it and then, or do the homeowners have to vote on raising the taxes to purchase it?
I can answer that, Jeff. They can pass it, they can submit an LOI, they could submit a contract offer, but it'll be clear that in the offer that it'll go to referendum, and until it's approved in sometime in February, that there's no guarantee the money is in.
Okay.
It's not very different than what the CEPD does when it seeks money to do beach renourishment. And so the answer is yes, their offer will be contingent on the voters approving the referendum in February. For the purchaser of the full 22 acres, he would be confident, he's confident that the voters will pass this for public safety and preservation reasons. But
Yeah.
if the public doesn't pass it and the fire department can't purchase that, then he will do whatever he needs to do to recoup his investment.
Yeah.
Consistent with the historic development pattern on Captiva, but we hope that would never come about. And if in fact, once the LOI is submitted by the fire department, obviously we will do everything we can to make sure that, to encourage the public to vote in favor of it.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, David, the developer's offer will not have a contingency regarding voters approving the a bond issue for the perhaps or approving a millage increase for the fire department to purchase the property. Whereas the fire department's offer will have that contingency.
Correct.
So I don't see why the seller would even consider the fire department's offer when he's got an offer, you know, that doesn't have that contingency in it. I guess there would be a case if they've got a very strong LOI for the Gulf side piece.
Yeah.
But you said they're seeking offers for the entire property, not in terms of parcels, correct?
That is correct.
It would seem to me like the only real offer we have is the one from the developer.
Yeah, and that is the assumptions we've made, is that.
Right. Now then, let me continue with my question. Then the developer, if he winds up winning this process, then he has verbally committed to us that he will follow our land use policy in developing the property.
Yes. Yes.
Uh,
And in fact, that will be made clear in his LOI to the foundation.
right, okay.
Land use doesn't prevent from development, though.
No, no, it would
Still
just
looking
be,
at
you know, he would have to, respect our current zoning, and the most important thing would be, you know, the no more than 3 units per housing. So, you know, we would still wind up with a lot of development on the Rauschenberg property if he were to be the winning bidder. But at least we could be assured that it would be a development that's in accordance with our current land use policy.
I think that's a very fair statement. Right now, those two properties, both the Bayside and the Gulf side, are zoned as 3 units per acre. If in fact somebody purchased it and wanted to put hotels in there, they would have to rezone that property. They'd have to go through the same process that we've just struggled through for the last couple of years, but they would have to rezone that property. And so that makes it a little more difficult for some of the other potential developers who may be making offers, because their development may be contingent on rezoning and going through the county and going through this whole process, whereas our LOIs are not seeking to rezone the properties.
Okay, well, I think if the other offers have, you know, contingencies such as rezoning the property against the will of the people, then
Yep.
that's going to seriously weaken those offers.
Yeah, I think that's right. But I think there are two things. First off, I think our offer is going to be fairly consistent with the market rates, market prices. But I think also, and I'm counting on this, that the Rauschenberg Foundation would prefer to have these properties preserved and go to the fire department for its public safety reasons.
Okay.
Believe that. Rauschenberg's a very fairly wealthy foundation. They now know the history. People have been contacting the foundation about their wishes here and will continue to do so. And unless there's some big gap between the community's LOI, so to speak, and what other developers are offering, I would hope that the foundation would accept the offer of the community or the community
Right.
developer. There's no obligation on the part of a private organization like the foundation to take the best or the highest offer. They can take whatever offer they want.
Well, they don't have any fiduciary responsibility to shareholders to act in the best financial interest. Yeah.
So that's where we stand at this point. A lot of this is clouded with confidentiality, and so this is about all I think we can say publicly. But I think the numbers, all the developers know the numbers are somewhere between 40 and 50. Everybody knows the Bayside's somewhere in the 20s.
Right.
And so it's going to be a question of where we end up. And, I think we have the advantage because I think we have the fire department and the developer who's been extremely generous in trying to help our community. And I think we have a foundation that I believe understands the importance of preserving this for the community, both for safety reasons and preservation reasons. So, what I would like, again, we have a motion on the floor. I understand John's issue, but we can't do anything more than we can at this point in terms of what we know. If you have a $23 million fire department purchase, I'm just making that up, or $20 million, and you keep all the properties. In other words, you don't get rid of any of them to reduce your tax bill, and you're going to have to tax for that. Is that going to be $1,000 a year? I don't know the answer to that, but it will be. It won't be small, but it will be important to preserve the fire safety, the safety of our community, to have a helicopter landing zone, which we absolutely need for our community and for our own health and safety reasons. And it will preserve over a longer period of time the existing fire station. So in the end, I think it behooves us, leaving aside the preservation aspects of it, it behooves us to support these LOIs. So Jeff, did you want to add anything here, or did I pretty much, did I say too much or too little?
No, I think in true fashion, I think you said enough and it was accurate. I don't think I really have a whole lot more to add to that. We like you mentioned, we are statutorily kind of handcuffed, if you will, on how much we can pay for things. He mentioned, yeah, the board has the authority to approve the LOI without the community's vote on that. But when it comes to funding the actual project, that actually would go to the referendum and whether or not the community wants to support the endeavor or not. So that is fully up to the community on support in the end. And I think he's probably pretty accurate on the cost and everything else that'll be determined in tomorrow's meeting, which, at that point is unfortunately our LOI, as you said, is public record at that point. All the other developers don't have that on their side. So everybody will know what ours is once it's approved at the meeting. And I do anticipate the board moving forward with approving that at tomorrow's meeting. So
I just want to add one thing, and I know he may not like this, but I don't mean you, Jeff. I mean, but is he the president or the chair of your board, Jeff Brown?
Jeff Brown is the chair, yes.
The chair of the board. He has done an amazing amount of work and effort to try to make this happen for the fire department. And he, at the end of the day, whatever happens here, he deserves a tremendous amount of credit for his diligence and for his commitment to the fire department and to the community in trying to make this happen. I just want people to know that.
Yeah, the board and all of us at the station have definitely explored every possible option on this project. Obviously, as David said, we can't, in our mission, we're not in conservation. Obviously, that's kind of a byproduct of what it would be with our LOI, but that's not our mission as far as our state charter. But we have spent, as you mentioned, Jeff has spent countless hours on this project. We have daily phone calls and emails and meetings and you name it. So we're trying to do what's best for the community and what's best for public safety in the future for everybody out here. As we know, land is very limited, and once this whatever happens with this, once this project is done, we know there's not going to be this much ever available again. I mean, once it's bought, it's either going to be preserved or developed. So we're doing our part as far as the fire district to try and help with that and provide for the future and the safety of this island going forward. So I don't have anything else to add, David. I think you pretty much hit all the main topics of discussion there. So thank you.
David, can I make a comment?
Sure.
So this is sort of as the private citizen and somebody who's worked on a lot of these, trying to figure out what to do about stormwater, what to do about sea level rise, and safety and resilience. I never thought these kind of options would become available to us. I think most of us never thought that, but the value to the community of Captiva to me seems to be immense, from safety, from conservation, from helping to solve some of our flooding problems, and just adding a boost to who we are on Captiva and what we are. We could have our own refuge on some of the island potentially. So I thank everyone who has worked on this. To me, it seems like such a tremendous benefit to our island.
Yeah. And I think SCCF will be very excited about this in so many ways, whether that be related to the Sea School or to a refuge or to boardwalks or whatever. I mean, I think the most of the organizations I've spoken with are extremely excited about the potential of this property for the future of Captiva, whether we have a small amphitheater for outdoor music in somewhere that we don't have at this point. It's just a myriad of possibilities here once we can secure this property. And then the community is going to have to work together to figure out how to do it in a fashion that works for everybody, and everybody has some input into that. And that's where the panel is going to have to play an important role, because that's part of our job. So we have a motion on the floor. If there's no further discussion, is there any further discussion? Okay, with no further discussion, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 All those opposed?
Aye,
I'm sorry, John. Did
I
you-
oppose.
So the motion passes with one person opposing. Thank you very much. And I understand John's concern is the millage rate. So anyway, so there we are. And I will draft a letter to the foundation in support of these LOIs, certainly the fire department LOI, and assuming that the other LOI is consistent with everything we've been told and has in its cover letter the representations that Jay and I discussed in this meeting, and that will be reflect the historic development pattern to the extent there will be development and hopefully no development, other than repurposing and redeveloping the existing properties on Leica Lane and maybe the existing house at the beach, which is also related right off like a lane. It already exists without increasing density. Okay? Yes? Done? Thank you, everybody. Next thing on the agenda is nominating committee. Tony Lappy had another meeting he had to go to, so he submitted to me a report, which I will read. As you know, we have nominations for next year for 2026 for the board. CPOA has nominations, the CCA has nominations, and the panel has nominations for at-large positions. My understanding is that there are two panel positions, at-large positions open. And so let me just go through what I've been sent. The CPOA has two positions, and they're nominating Sandy Stillwell Youngquist for another 3-year term, and Marguerite Maville for another 3-year term. So that was simple. The CCA, there's one opening, and that was John Rosen, and he was appointed midterm, and he's been nominated by CCA or appointed by CCA for another 3-year term. Those are done strictly by the CPOA and the CCA. The panel has nothing to do with those appointments unless they weren't made, but they were made. Okay, so the nominating committee had 2 open seats available, and they received resumes from 4 candidates. The 4 candidates who sought to be panel members were Jay Brown, Bob Randau, Bob Adler, and Christopher Kemp. Those were the 4 individuals who submitted their names to be on the panel. The nominating committee met, and they are nominating Jay Brown and Bob Randau as the to their recommendations to the panel. The rationale the little information I received, but it's compelling, is Jay Brown obviously is chairing 2 committees of the panel and has devoted years of work with respect to the sewer project, and now with the stormwater project, and it's the feeling of nominating committee he needs to be on the panel to continue this valuable work. Bob Rando has requested to be on the panel for a number of years. And he's not been given a position on that panel, but he's his request has been outstanding for a long time. But probably more importantly, when Tony Lappy, as a business member on Captiva, is leaving the panel, I think it was important to have balance, have another business leader or another business on the panel. And Bob Randall obviously is an owner of Captiva Cruises and McCarthy's Marina. So he was selected. The 2 other candidates who I will personally reach out to, who have, Bob Adler has been extremely behind the scenes helpful on a lot of the litigation matters that have been going on. And so there will be a role for Bob because and there will be opportunities in the future for him to join the board. And Christopher Kemp submitted his resume, which is an extremely impressive resume. And I'm going to personally reach out to Christopher and see if he'd like to work on a committee with us, and then work his way onto the panel. Most people don't know Christopher, so this will be an opportunity for him to work with the panel and people to get to know him. Ken Goodham, would you just send, when you get a chance, both Bob, all the resumes to the panel members, so they see, if they haven't seen them yet, the impressive resumes of those people who sought to be on the panel, particularly Bob Adler and Christopher Kemp, so the panel has an opportunity to see them. And the reason I want that done is because the panel does not have to accept the recommendations of the nominating committee. In other words, the nominating committee is recommending Jay and Bob Randolph, but you don't have to accept those nominations. The panel members can suggest other individuals and submit their resumes, or other people can submit their resumes, but it's the panel members can suggest others, and any other resumes need to come in by the November meeting. So we have the recommendation of the nominating committee, the panel's nominating committee of Jay and Bob, but the panel members suggest other nominations, and those suggestions have to be in by November with resumes submitted to Ken Gooderham. Okay, then at the December meeting, the panel will vote on who will fill those two positions. They will either accept the two recommendations made by the nominating committee, or one of the two, or none of the two, or they will vote for someone else that they are recommending separate from the nominating committee. But in the past, we've always voted for those who are recommended by the nominating committee, but the bylaws does provide for the other option. Okay, that's where we stand. Are there any questions about the nominating?
No. I just want to say, Dave, those are four great candidates right there, all four. But yeah, I just want to say that. And
yeah, no, and I think we've always had the intent. Anybody who wants to, who puts their name in to be on the panel means they want to work with us, and so we'll figure out a way that they can.
yeah, great. Thank you.
Okay, so that's the nominating committee report. I want to thank Tony Lappy for coordinating all this. I'm sorry he wasn't here today, and he just passed me that report. Next thing on the agenda is the Stormwater Committee update. Jay Brown.
Okay, the Stormwater Committee is in a situation now where we have to await the results of a consulting study that is currently underway. The study was funded by the county, and so because it was funded by the county is choosing to view this consulting study as their study rather than the panel study, and county people are responsible for working with the consultants to complete the study. Our Stormwater Committee doesn't have any input, into that consulting project. I have on numerous occasions spoken with the person on the county who is guiding this consulting study. His name is Phil Gilligy. I've on several occasions reached out to him and said that you ought to have at least one or two Captiva people, present whenever you're reviewing progress with the consultants. They're set up to have monthly progress reviews now. We ought to be present for that. And he, on every one of those occasions, has rejected that and said that he will provide me brief summaries of what the status of with the consultants is each time after he meets with the consultants. So that's the level of feedback I'm going to be able to provide when I'm asked to report, what the Stormwater Committee's progress is. Where the consulting project stands now, all of the survey work on Captiva has been completed. And the consultants are in the process now of constructing a model of how all the stormwater, flows on Captiva. They expect to have the model done in a couple of 3 weeks. So after they have the model done and they understand, how all the flows work on Captiva, then they'll start looking at various ways to control the flows of water so that it results in the least amount of damage to Captiva properties. I've discussed with them as how do you value a retention pond? Because I thought that having some way of valuing a potential pond could be valuable to how the community might think about the value of the Rauschenberg property. If we were to get it, that would enable us a location for a retention pond on Captiva, which there would be no immediate apparent alternative site for retention pond other than on the Rauschenberg property. The way that works is the consultants can say, if you have a retention pond, here's how much further you'll be able to control stormwater versus not having a retention pond. And so then it's up to the community to say, all right, that has this much value in terms of limiting stormwater damage. Where are we going to place a retention pond, and how much does it cost to procure that land? So that's how you establish the value of a retention pond. So there's no way we can do that at the current time. That's not, the project's not further enough along. So where we stand now then, just to summarize, all the surveying work is done and the consultants are building the model right now of stormwater flows. That should be done in the next month or so, and then they'll start looking at various ways to control flows to minimize damage to the community. So I wish I could provide you all a beefier summary of what's going on, but I'm limited because I'm not allowed to sit in on these meetings and probe the consultants myself, with questions and better understand what they're doing. So any questions on stormwater?
I just have the one suggestion, because you were talking about a retention pond, but there's also underground water storage. And so let's say we had, let's just say we dreamed really big and we had it added to more public parking down closer to the beach. And then under the parking was stormwater retention, and then people pay to park. And so it pays for itself for the parking fees. And so
okay.
Would this be the time that they would want to know about that potential? And they could say, no, actually.
Well, apparently they don't want to hear anything from us.
Yeah, I guess, but it would be good for them in the study while they're doing it, if they had two possibilities that they had. Number one, you could do a pond, retention pond, but then it's a pond that you have to maintain, et cetera. Or underground, what's the value of one, and is it twice as much retention that you're able to, or less, or, I just don't know.
Right, I understand.
Yeah, so that would be worth, we have their number, we could maybe just send them an email and just make them aware of it and let them take it or not, but while they're doing the study. Otherwise, later on, they probably charge more to update the study,
Yeah, I think my suggestion would be is to, wait until we have some kind of assurance or reasonable expectation that we might be able to get the property, before we have the consultants, working on, working on alternative uses under the assumption that we control the property. If we don't control the property, then, that work's not going to be valuable to us. So I would say, Sandy, we bring that up again if we think, in a month from now, we've got a reasonable shot at the community winding up controlling the Rauschenberg property.
Okay. Anything else on stormwater? Okay, next is wastewater.
Okay, on wastewater, uh, I think I provided a very comprehensive review at the last meeting of everything that had gone on with wastewater. With the very key issues being that the project's costs have escalated, far beyond what we once thought they would be, primarily due to two needs that Sanibel will have that we never anticipated. The first being we always assumed that Sanibel's existing piping system would be adequate to carry the Captiva flows. They did a study which said they're not adequate and they have to run parallel pipes. And that's a cost of $14 million that we weren't anticipating. And then secondly, another Sanibel consulting project determined that their existing ability to get rid of processed wastewater was not adequate and that Sanibel would have to construct a $25 million roughly cost deep water injection well, to get rid of the additional wastewater that they'd be processing for us. So, and then the third thing that happened is when we did the HUD grant, Kimley Horn reevaluated all of their cost estimates that they had done for us previously and brought them up quite a bit. So the net is what we thought was about a $25 million project now is about a $75 million project. So that's one big problem we have. The second big problem we have is that many in the community fear that if we had a central sewer system, that would result in unwanted development or encourage unwanted development on Captiva. And, that concern has validity now that we've seen how the BOCC has valued preserving our land codes, our land use policies. We realize now that we really can't count on them to preserve our land use policies. So that becomes a more important factor than it used to be. The current step that's in process now is we're forming a working group with members of the panel and members of Sanibel's city government. On the panel, it'll be me, David Mintz, and Mike Bennett will be representing Captiva. And on Sanibel, it'll be Dana Sousa, John Chappell, or Steve Chappell, who's the assistant county manager, and then Fred Mitty, who would be a consultant with Tetra Tech, but is now an employee of the city of Sanibel, and one other person who I was not able to recognize his name. So the committee is going to have its first meeting this coming Friday, and we're going to start to try to work on the big issues now that have risen with the consulting project, mainly the cost issues. We know that that a great many property owners in Sanibel are using the Sanibel wastewater system to dispose of excess, stormwater. And if we could find a way to limit the use of the stormwater that Sanibel residents are putting into the wastewater system, then it's my theory that we might then have enough capacity that we wouldn't have to have those pipes and that additional deep well injection to get rid of the processed wastewater. So we'll be working on things to try to reduce the costs and then also working on ways to try to develop grant money or other sources of funding rather than asking Captiva property owners to pay for this. So again, first meeting of that working group will be this Friday, and I hope that working group can make some progress on this. I should point out also that it's the feeling of Kimley Horn that it might be possible to refurbish the FGA plant and make it long-term environmentally sustainable, that it might be possible to do those two things to the FGA plant at considerably lower cost than following through on the Sanibel, alternative. And Kimley Horn has offered to develop a plan for how the FGA plant would be strengthened and the capacity expanded, and what that cost might be on a gratis basis without charging us any money. Now, Doug didn't talk about any timetable for doing that, but I think that could turn out to be another valuable input for us to go along with what the working committee is able to do to reduce the property owner costs of the Sanibel partnership strategy. So that's kind of a wastewater update. Be happy to field any questions.
Any questions for Jay?
Good report. Thanks, Jay.
Okay.
We're all experts on sewers.
I'm sorry?
We're all experts on sewers.
Yeah, right. Yeah, if you would have told me, 10 years ago, I'd know something about septic tanks and sewers, I would have said you're crazy. Now, I know far more than I ever wanted to know.
On the agenda is Infrastructure Committee. I got an email from Mike saying there's no update. Is that correct, Mike?
That's correct. I was in contact with our friends at Lee County DOT, and they're still working through the process they described last month and did not have any update for us this month.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Development Committee, Marguerite Maville. I don't know. Yeah, she is.
Yes, she's here, and we just arrived at the airport, so I'm keeping it brief. The most important part is that we have 2 dates for the Welcome Back Cruise on December 1st and for a fundraiser the night before Valentine's Day on February 13th. For the Welcome Cruise, we would like to charge a ticket price of $125. And I don't know if what I would like to suggest is we could make a ticket tier 2 where certain tickets have a name like Wave Maker or Sea Breeze Catcher or Tide Turner. So should someone like to give more than the ticket, they could do it that way. I don't know if it's something that I decide or that we discuss with the panel. I would like to discuss it and get your opinion about it.
Make it, Marguerite, make a recommendation and the panel will approve it or not.
Yeah, so the idea is to offer different ticket prices under different names.
Okay.
So what Marguerite is saying is rather than have $125 ticket price for the Welcome Back Cruise, you can get it for $125 or you can pay more.
That's right. You can be the Wave Maker with 125, or you can be the Sea Breeze Catcher with 200, or the Wind Gust Converter with, and I haven't set the amounts in stone. So other than people deciding on their own whether they want to give more, we give them the option by choosing a certain ticket.
Marguerite, I think right now it states like it's a tax deductible donation of $125 or more.
Yeah.
So if it's easier, you could just leave it like that with one ticket. I would say whatever's easier, because if somebody's inclined to donate more, they'll just write a check for more than 125.
Yeah, so I just wanted your opinion. Should we offer it, or should we leave it up to everyone?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does anybody have an opinion? So we can make it a little more complicated and have different names for different prices. Or we can do what John Jensen suggested, that the minimum, the price for the cruise is $125, but we're encouraging that people can afford it to contribute more, which is tax deductible.
Yeah. Yeah.
Marguerite, are you okay with John's recommendation?
Yes, yeah, that's what we pretty much did in the past, other than the last cruise where we didn't request people to buy a ticket because it was shortly after the hurricane. Good, yeah, good.
Okay. Anything else, Marguerite?
Yes, I will.
Oh,
Yeah.
Marguerite. Hey,
Yes.
do you know Kevin Podorf? He worked with Bob Rauschenberg for 15 years, and he was with Bob when he passed away. And I was talking to him about your event on the 13th, and he's a good storyteller. He'd be willing to come out, and he has some Rauschenberg prints and other artwork. He's willing to bring some of that out and display it, and he said he would sell one of the prints, and if it put it on for sale, and if it did sell, he would donate a percentage to the community panel.
Yes, actually, I would very much like that. The musician, Ted Apple, was also very close with Bob. And she has some beautiful stories. And it's important for us, especially now with the land for sale, because one of the reasons that Bob accumulated all those parcels was that he wanted to protect Captiva and keep it the way it is and protect it from overdevelopment.
Yeah, and Kevin and
Yeah.
are good friends. So I'll give you I'll send you Kevin's phone number, and you could reach out to. I told him you were kind of in charge of this, so I'll send you the phone number, and you could reach out to him, or if you need help, let me know. Okay.
Yeah, great.
You understand that Marguerite is doing not only the Captiva Cruise fundraiser, but a fundraiser the Friday before Valentine's Day with someone who I guess we would call a storyteller entertainer. And now John's adding to that with someone else that can tell some stories as a fundraiser for the panel the Friday night before Valentine's Day. That'll take place, I guess, at the Captiva Civic Association.
Yeah.
So two good things. And then the third thing is Ken and Marguerite are working on a letter to solicit funds. We do an annual solicitation letter explaining what the panel does and why it's important to support it. And that'll be the third leg of this stool that will raise funds for the panel. And hopefully that'll get us through the next year. Fair enough, Marguerite?
Yes, very good. Yes. So if I may excuse myself, we have to. Yeah. So more at the next meeting.
All right. Thank you, Margaret.
And yeah, thank you, everyone. I'm gonna say goodbye. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, next thing on the agenda is panel members and comments. Any questions or comments from panel members?
I have one comment.
Sandy, go ahead.
Yes, on the 24th, which is not this Friday, but the following Friday, that's Bob Rauschenberg. It would have been his 100th birthday. And so, isn't it something? Yeah, and so downtown at the Love Grove studio, they're going to be doing something. They're kind of trying to figure out what. They just wanted to do something, and I know Kevin is involved with that too. I don't really have any information to share, but you could always call the Love Grove studio or call Kevin. He would bring you up to date too if anybody was interested in attending it.
Great.
Sandy, why don't you just mention what's happening with the Island Inn, because I'm not there, but I know there's a big event, so why don't you just talk about that?
Thank you. Yes, we have the groundbreaking tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock at the Captiva Island Inn. So we're breaking ground on a whopping 10 rooms, but you know, and so it's 5 rooms on one side of the street and 5 rooms on the other. And it'll be, you know, very cottagey looking, and I think you all like it, but you're welcome to attend. It's open to anybody.
Thank you. Congratulations, Sandy.
Yeah.
Any other comments from panel members? Ken, are there any comments from the community?
There was one from a while back that I didn't want to interrupt on. It was a question going back to South Seas. What is the status of the suit against the CCA now that the judge has ruled the hotel count is actually 912?
Okay, yeah, the status of yes, South Seas has sued the CCA. The CCA has filed a motion for sanctions and attorney's fees against South Seas because it believes it's a frivolous lawsuit. And there is a status conference set up by the judge on that case on the 20th of October. So nothing has happened on that case, and we're gonna get at the conference, we'll get a sense of how this case will go forward, if at all, on the 20th. Anything else, Ken?
That was all.
Okay, any other comments from anyone?
No.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
Okay.
John Jensen makes a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Mike Bennett seconds it. All those in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
All right.
All those opposed, say nay. Adjourned. Okay.
Thanks, David. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
All right. Take care, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.